Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I have a story that started before the COVID-19 pandemic and just concluded a few months ago. This is my first time posting, and English is my third language, so please forgive any errors I might make. I'm a typical laid-back guy who was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. As the black sheep and middle child of my family, talk about a double whammy, I've at least got a bit of brains and some luck that I use day to day. Thanks to my parents' connections, I attended prestigious schools in my country, completed my military service where I was promoted to major, and then shipped off to college abroad. I've never been particularly close with many people outside my circle of friends, and I prefer it that way. After college, I landed a government job. Family connections, you guessed it. And after a few years, I used my name to get ahead and meet people who helped me set up several businesses in my area, a coastal city where this story takes place. The money I used came from allowances, a small inheritance from my late grandma, some investments, a fund started when I was a baby, and gifts from family. It was basically their attempt to keep me from being broke enough to embarrass them, even though I'm a pretty low-maintenance guy. My businesses are booming since our coastal area attracts loads of tourists, both local and international, as well as locals hoping to mingle with tourists for green cards, pen pals, spouses, and the like. Pretty typical for a coastal city, I guess. As a business owner, I keep most, if not all, of my staff on salary. It's the best way for them to get benefits, and it's easier for me tax-wise. Tipping isn't really part of our culture here, so it's more of a gift when it happens. I provide my staff with comprehensive medical insurance, including dental and optical coverage, on top of the National Healthcare Scheme. We're also legally required to provide retirement benefits, a minimum of 21 working days of leave. I give 30, and my businesses offer paid overtime, extended medical leave for surgeries and serious conditions, and allowances for treatments like chemo or dialysis. The incident that sparked this whole story involved one of my female employees, Sarah. She's an older lady, brilliant at her job, who had worked her way up to manager and was loved by everyone. Sarah came to me one day and said, "Boss, I need to schedule a hysterectomy. My mother passed away from cervical cancer a few years back, and I'm at high risk. With 4 kids already, it seems like the most logical step." I nodded, understanding the gravity of her situation. "Of course, Sarah. Have you found a hospital in our network?" She had done her due diligence and found a private hospital within our insurance system for the procedure. When the planned date arrived, she applied for leave days, which we rejected since it fell under medical leave. Sarah went ahead with the procedure, which was successful, and she had a quick recovery. The bill was supposed to be covered by the company insurance, and we had made sure to get all the necessary pre-authorizations. A few months later, Sarah came to work looking distraught. We thought she might have received bad news about cancer, but what happened was much worse. She had been given a bill by the hospital because the insurance had refused to pay, citing that it wasn't covered. I was livid. "This is ridiculous," I told my accounts manager, Jack. "We made sure everything was in order. Go talk to the insurance people and sort this out." Jack returned looking angrier than when he left. "Boss, you won't believe this. I showed them all the evidence, and they just told me to buzz off." I decided to visit the office personally. After keeping me waiting for an hour, they had the audacity to inform me that the director from the head office, who happened to be in the area, had declined to meet me because he was busy. Fuming, I flew to their head office in the capital city, a 2-hour flight away. The head office was no help either. They claimed they had revised their policy a month prior, making the procedure no longer covered. When I pointed out that Sarah's surgery was done 5 months before that, they said the change was retroactive for 12 months. "Why wasn't I informed of this major change?" I demanded. The representative shrugged. "We informed our large clients and planned to tell others when their policies were up for renewal." I insisted on speaking to their boss, the company vice president, since the CEO was out. Their response floored me. "We're a large company and have no time to argue semantics with low-end clients. If you don't like it, you can frankly leave and find a new insurance company." I was beyond livid. In all my years, I'd experienced some disrespect and usually let it slide to avoid problems. But this time, they'd gone too far. I flew back home, went straight to the hospital, and settled Sarah's bill in full. When I handed Sarah the receipt, she insisted, "Boss, I'll do anything to pay you back." I shook my head firmly. "Absolutely not, Sarah. This wasn't your fault, and I'll be damned if you pay for something so far out of your control." After a few days to cool down, I met with my directors. "How long would it take us to switch to another insurance provider?" I asked, the insulting words from the insurance company still ringing in my ears. They investigated a few large rivals and discovered it would take 6 months for a new insurance to provide full coverage. We found a company, let's call them New Health, that offered a much better deal. They provided comprehensive cover, dental and optical, mental health cover, physiotherapy and occupational therapy, rehabilitative services, mobility device acquisition for disabled employees, smart cards for direct outpatient payments, a dedicated team of relationship managers, death and funeral benefits, expanded coverage area, and coverage for up to 6 dependents plus spouse. It would cost more, but I didn't care. When I went to cancel our policy with the old insurance company, let's call them Old Guard, they seemed unfazed. They thought I was just pulling one small business. Their jaws dropped when I walked in with several people and boxes of documents. As my lawyer explained who I was and mentioned my family name, the looks of shock, confusion, and panic on their faces were priceless. Suddenly, they were falling over themselves with apologies and attempts to negotiate. The news reached their head office, prompting visits from their director, the one who was too busy to see me before, chief legal officer, chief financial officer, and company president. I even got a personal call from their CEO who was abroad. "Mr. Thompson," the CEO said, his voice dripping with forced politeness, "I understand there's been a misunderstanding. I assure you we value your business greatly." I cut him off. "A misunderstanding? Your staff insulted me and denied a valid claim. There's no misunderstanding, just poor service and disrespect. No amount of sweet-talking could change my mind." Within 6 weeks, we had completely removed ourselves from Old Guard. During the waiting period and after New Health's coverage began, I shared my experience with friends and family. To my surprise, they took my words to heart and also pulled their businesses from Old Guard. The company took such a huge hit that when COVID-19 became a big deal, they were barely staying afloat. They went into receivership soon after and were acquired by New Health, their greatest rival. The directors and CEO got their golden parachutes and resigned, while most of their employees were retained, except for the senior executives, including those who had told my manager to buzz off. In a twist of irony, the building they operated from in our town was sold, and guess who purchased it? That's right, yours truly. I decided to remodel the inside and turn it into a business rental space. All in all, it was a satisfying payback. Wherever those disrespectful executives are now, I hope they learned that everyone is human, no one is above anyone else, and karma can be a real piece of work. The next one is an entitled people story. I never thought I'd end up owning a coffee shop, but life has a funny way of working out sometimes. After years of working my way up from barista to manager at various cafes, I finally took the plunge and bought my own place. It was a cozy little shop in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it had potential. I poured my heart and soul into fixing it up, determined to make it a success. The first few months were tough. I was working crazy hours, trying to balance the books, manage staff, and still find time to actually make coffee. But slowly, things started to come together. We built up a loyal customer base, and I even managed to hire a few great employees to help take some of the pressure off. One of those employees was Sarah, a college student who quickly became my right-hand woman. She was smart, hardworking, and had a knack for remembering everyone's orders. The regulars loved her, and I knew I could trust her to run things when I wasn't around. It was on one of my rare days off that everything went sideways. I was at home enjoying a much-needed break when I got a frantic call from Sarah. "Boss, you need to get down here right away," she said, her voice shaking. "There's this lady causing a huge scene, and she's demanding to speak to the owner." I sighed, already feeling a headache coming on. "What's she upset about?" "That's the thing," Sarah replied. "She's not even a customer. She just stormed in here ranting about how we're too noisy and demanding we shut down. When I told her we weren't going to do that, she started screaming that she knows the owner and she's going to have us all fired." I felt my blood pressure rising. "All right, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Just try to keep her calm until I arrive." When I walked into the shop, I could hear the commotion before I even saw it. A woman with a severe bob haircut and designer sunglasses was standing at the counter, her face red with anger as she berated Sarah. "I don't care what your little manager told you," the woman was saying, her voice dripping with disdain. "I know the owner personally, and when I tell him about this, you'll all be out on the street." I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Excuse me, ma'am. I'm the owner. What seems to be the problem?" The woman whirled around, her eyes narrowing behind her sunglasses. "You?" she scoffed. "You're not the owner. I know the owner, and he's a respectable businessman, not some barista." I felt my temper flaring, but forced myself to stay calm. "I can assure you I am the owner. I bought this place 6 months ago. Now, if you have a complaint, I'd be happy to discuss it with you privately." The woman, who I was mentally referring to as Karen by this point, crossed her arms. "Fine, let's talk. I want this place shut down immediately. The noise from your customers is disturbing the peace of the neighborhood." I blinked, taken aback. "Ma'am, we're a small coffee shop in a commercial area. We're not violating any noise ordinances." "Don't give me that!" Karen snapped. I live 2 blocks away and I can hear people talking and laughing at all hours. It's unacceptable. I glanced at Sarah, who looked as confused as I felt. 2 blocks away? Ma'am, I don't think you can even hear us from there. Are you calling me a liar? Karen's voice rose to a shriek. I'll have you know my husband is a lawyer and will sue you for everything you've got. At this point, customers were starting to stare, and I could see Sarah looking increasingly uncomfortable. I decided it was time to end this. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave, I said firmly. You're disrupting our business and upsetting our customers. If you have a legitimate complaint, you're welcome to file it through the proper channels, but right now you need to go. Karen's face turned an even deeper shade of red. How dare you? Do you know who I am? I'm on the neighborhood council, and I'll make sure this dump is shut down by the end of the week. I'd had enough. Ma'am, this is your final warning. Leave now, or I'll be forced to call the police. For a moment, I thought she might actually throw a punch, but then she grabbed her designer handbag and stormed towards the door. You haven't heard the last of this, she shouted as she left. I'll ruin you. As soon as she was gone, the tension in the shop broke. Several customers started applauding, and I heard more than a few muttered comments about entitled Karens. I turned to Sarah, who looked shaken but relieved. You okay? I asked. She nodded. Yeah, thanks for coming in. That was intense. I gave her a reassuring smile. You handled it well. Why don't you take your break now? I'll cover the counter. As Sarah headed to the back room, I started checking on the other customers, making sure everyone was okay and apologizing for the disturbance. To my surprise, most of them were more concerned about us than annoyed by the incident. Don't let her get to you, one regular told me as I refilled his coffee. We love this place. It's the best thing that's happened to the neighborhood in years. His words warmed my heart, but I couldn't shake the nagging worry that Karen might actually try to cause trouble for us. I spent the rest of the day distracted, half expecting her to show up with a lawyer or the police in tow. But days passed and nothing happened. Life at the coffee shop went back to normal, and I started to think maybe Karen had just been all talk. Then, about a week later, I got a letter from the city. My stomach dropped as I opened it, expecting to find some kind of citation or complaint. Instead, I found myself staring at a notice about an upcoming neighborhood council meeting. The main agenda item? A proposal to impose stricter noise regulations on local businesses? I didn't have to be a genius to figure out who was behind this. Karen might not have been able to shut us down directly, but she was clearly trying to make life difficult for us through official channels. I spent the next few days researching local ordinances and gathering evidence to support our case. I also reached out to other business owners in the area, warning them about what was happening and asking for their support. When the day of the meeting arrived, I closed the shop early and headed to the community center with Sarah and a few of our regular customers who had volunteered to speak on our behalf. As we walked in, I spotted Karen sitting near the front, a smug smile on her face. The meeting started with the usual bureaucratic procedures, but soon enough we got to the main event. Karen stood up, cleared her throat, and launched into a dramatic speech about the noise pollution plaguing the neighborhood. Our once peaceful streets have been turned into a carnival of chaos, she declared, her voice dripping with fake concern. Constant chatter, laughter, and the clanking of dishes have made it impossible for hardworking residents to enjoy the sanctity of their own homes. We must take action to preserve the character of our community. I had to admire her theatrics, even as I seethed at the blatant exaggeration. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and stood up. Good evening, everyone. I'm the owner of the Daily Grind, the coffee shop that seems to be at the center of this issue. I paused, making eye contact with various council members. I want to start by saying that we take our responsibility to the community very seriously. We're not just a business, we're your neighbors too. I went on to present the facts. Our operating hours, our adherence to existing noise regulations, and testimonials from nearby residents who had no issues with our presence. I also pointed out the economic benefits we brought to the area, including jobs for local students and increased foot traffic for other businesses. The proposed regulations, I concluded, would not only hurt us, but could potentially drive away other small businesses that give this neighborhood its unique character. Is that really what we want? As I sat down, I could see Karen fuming in her seat, but to my surprise, several other residents stood up to speak in our favor. They talked about how the coffee shop had become a community hub, a place where people could meet, work, and connect. One elderly gentleman even stood up and said, I live right next door to the coffee shop, and I can tell you the only noise that bothers me is this lady's constant complaining. That got a big laugh from the crowd. In the end, the council voted overwhelmingly to reject the proposed regulations. As people started to file out, I caught Karen's eye. She glared at me with a look of pure venom before storming out. I thought that would be the end of it, but Karen wasn't done yet. Over the next few weeks, she tried everything she could think of to cause trouble for us. She filed complaints about our signage, our outdoor seating, even the color we'd painted the building. Each time, we had to scramble to prove we were in compliance with all relevant regulations. It was exhausting and stressful, but something unexpected happened along the way. The more Karen attacked us, the more the community rallied around us. Our customers started going out of their way to support us, bringing friends and family to the shop and leaving glowing reviews online. Other local business owners reached out to offer support and advice. The final straw came when Karen tried to claim we were violating health codes. She showed up one day with a health inspector in tow, clearly expecting to find some damning evidence. But thanks to Sarah's meticulous attention to cleanliness and our strict adherence to all health regulations, the inspection turned up nothing. As the inspector was leaving, he paused at the door. "You know," he said, loud enough for Karen to hear, "I've been doing this job for 20 years, and this is one of the cleanest establishments I've ever seen. You should be proud." The look on Karen's face was priceless. She stormed out without a word, and we never had trouble from her again. In the months that followed, our little coffee shop thrived like never before. We became known not just for our great coffee, but as a symbol of community resilience. People would come in and joke about how they'd heard our lattes from 2 blocks away. Looking back, I realized that Karen's crusade against us had actually been a blessing in disguise. It had brought the neighborhood together and turned our coffee shop into something more than just a business. It was a reminder that when a community stands together, no amount of entitlement or bullying can break it apart. As for me, well, I learned a valuable lesson about standing up for what's right and the importance of building strong relationships with your neighbors. And every now and then, when I'm locking up late at night, I'll raise my voice just a little and say, "Good night, Karen, wherever you are." After all, a little laughter never hurt anyone, even if you can hear it from 2 blocks away. The next one is a petty revenge story. I live on the first floor of a 3-story apartment complex where my unit is right next to the shared laundry room. We're technically only allowed to use the machines between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., but people sometimes do their laundry as late as midnight. I have no problems with it as I work late and can't hear the machines when my linen closet and bedroom closet doors are closed. Recently, one of the dryers have been making a horrendous screeching noise when it's running. It's so loud that I could hear it everywhere in my apartment. The nearby units possibly hear it too. I had the manager schedule a technician to come by, look into it, and leave a sign on the machine saying to only use it between 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. out of consideration of the neighbors. My neighbors have been great about it, and some even made a point to run the dryer when I'm not home. There's a guy on the 3rd floor that seems to only do laundry once a month. He accumulates so much clothes to wash that he uses all the washers and dryers on each floor, but takes forever to remove his clothes from the dryer. He's been confronted, reported a few times for this, and I thought he stopped until the other night. It was almost midnight when I got home from work. I was walking to my unit when I see the guy getting into the elevator. That's when I hear the distressing wails of the dryer echoing down the hall. I went to the laundry room and saw that the dryer was started 3 minutes ago, with the big sign saying the hours of operation still posted. I wasn't in the mood to deal with the shrilling noise digging into my brain and ears for the next 57 minutes, so I opened the door to stop the machine, then closed it so the timer will continue, but the machine won't run. I got to sleep in peace and quiet that night. Before I went to work today, I checked the dryer. The timer had reached 0 and the clothes were still inside, damp with a bit of a smell to it. I closed the door and left for work. I got to the entrance of the apartment building when I see the guy exit the elevator. I said nothing to him as I watched him walk towards the laundry room while carrying a basket. Enjoy spending another $4 washing and drying your clothes. The next one is a malicious compliance story. While talking to a friend, an old story came up that fits this sub perfectly, so I thought I'd share it with you. The whole thing happened 25 years ago, if I remember correctly. The whole thing took place in the city of Aachen, also known under its French name Aix-la-Chapelle in the English-speaking world. The city's police department had ordered a new batch of police vans and handed in the necessary paperwork with the city's Department of Motor Vehicles. Unfortunately for the police, the city clerk who processed the paperwork decided to play a little prank on them. To understand the prank, you have to understand German license plates. They are separated into 3 blocks, a regional identifier of 1, 3 letters, a letter block of 1, 2 letters, and a number block ranging VOM 1 to 9,999. A typical license plate from Berlin would look like this, B MP 165. You can select the 2nd and 3rd block yourself if the combination is still available. But if you don't give a preference, they will just randomly assign a free combination. The prank. The regional identifier for Aachen is AC, and just as you might guess right now, the clerk opted to insert a preference for the letter block AB into the paperwork. Thus, the police department received new sets of license plates that all started with ACAB, the well-known acronym for All Cops Are Bastards. The story subsequently made the headlines as a funny anecdote, but they didn't say what happened to the clerk afterwards. As a government official, they could not be fired, but the German administration isn't exactly known for tolerance or a sense of humor. They probably got off with a warning and a secret thumbs up from their department, unless the police pressed charges under our strict libel laws. The police requested new registrations, and while the media didn't say what came of that, the DMV probably agreed just to avoid interdepartmental trouble. The imperial city of Aachen holds great historical significance for both countries as the main residence of Charles the Great, or Charlemagne, first Holy Roman Emperor, technically Carolingian Emperor, but he started the line, and King of the Franks and a whole lot of other peoples. Also known as six-packs in German after the popular pack of beverages, because our word for bottle, Flasch, also means loser or useless person, of which the vehicles in question can usually carry 6 in full gear. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.